Hey, what's good, everybody? It's me, your hero, Benjamin Banks, and you are watching a brand new episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And joining me, as always, are my co-hosts from the Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks podcast, Terrific Trav and Rebellious D. How you fellas doing tonight?
You know the answer.
Fantastic.
Terrific.
PG. Okay. All right, PG. All right. Well, hey, guys, it's always good to have you up here. And this episode is going to be coming out during the week of the Great Turkey War. And I'm ready to get into it. And hopefully we survive the Great Turkey War because it is always an incredible battle. And joining us on today's episode is somebody that is a legend in the game. He's worked on so many TV shows, produced, written, starred, actor. And that is Mr. Steve Harper. Steve, thank you so much for joining us up here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. Thanks for that introduction. I can't even live up to that. I should leave right now. That's
hey, like I said, man, it's just like we giving you your flowers, we giving you your hand claps, and we giving you the pinkies, man.
And so, the breadsticks. Don't forget the breadsticks.
Don't forget the breadsticks. We got to give them the breadsticks. So before we get into today's interview, everybody that's watching, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to the channel, and you hit that bell button so that way you're always notified when we have new content here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. And D, like you tell everybody that watches us every week.
Podcast in the description. Like, follow, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.
All right, cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. Steve, like I said, man, huge fan. You know, when I saw you comment on my tweet when I had watched episode 7 of Stargirl, like I got really excited like a fangirl. And then when you said that you wanted to come up here and like I checked your resume, I was just like, yo, not only did he do work for Stargirl, he also did work for God Friended Me. And like that was a really awesome show that I really enjoyed. Yes. So I can't wait to, get to those portions of the interview where we can talk about that stuff. But first, what we always do here on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks is we ask all of our guests, what is your origin story? Every hero or villain has one. So tell everybody who Steve Harper is.
Yes. Well, I'm originally from New York. I was born in Brooklyn, grew up on Long Island. And my parents are educators. They're both retired from the New York City school system. And my dad's a visual artist. So he was an art teacher. Nice. At the profession, and also has created a bunch of stuff. And so I grew up in a household where, creativity was just king. Like I would be sitting at the dinner table, I'd be writing poems, I'd be like writing my own comic books, drawing my own comic books. There was singing in my house. There was, I was creating short stories. Just about anything that came out of my imagination was welcome in my house. And then I started really in the industry as an actor. So I, got my first agent when I was a senior in high school, just auditioned for a ton of stuff and then, finally booked things and, all sorts of stuff has happened. One of the things that I say about my writing, I will tell you guys this, I say my dad is a major Catholic, believes in the books of the church. Mm-hmm. My mother believes in the books of the horror section of the bookstore. Nice. So I would come home from Catholic school and I'd be like, Mom, what's happening in Salem's Lot? And she would put me in. Good one. So consequently, I write about for my own original stuff. And fortunately, a lot of the stuff that I've done in the industry, I write what I call the invisible things. So sometimes that involves ghosts or spirits in the work, but sometimes it involves things I think people aren't talking about, like race or sexuality or politics or religion, and I really love to sort of dig underneath the surface and get to those things that are sort of hidden from view. And that's the fun space, the sweet spot for me.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
That definitely sounds, interesting. And, I can just tell by your origin story, like, you had very supportive parents because like you said, it's like you would write, you would draw, you were very creative. And I feel like that is a blessing and a good thing when you have supportive parents in your house that, push you to do certain things. Cause, I've heard stories before where it's just like, somebody, they might be artistic or they might be a good singer. And it's just like when they don't have the support from their parents or their family, that can kind of derail them from, whatever, adventure that they want to go on to, further themselves in life. So like, that's awesome that you had parents like that. Now, I wanted to piggyback off of something that you had said, because you said that your father, he was Catholic, he was religious, and your mom, you know, she read the horror books and stuff like that. Were there ever any times where there was any conflict? Because it's just like, say, for example, you know, you wanted to watch a horror movie or you wanted to read a book, and then like your father would be like, you're not allowed to read that, or like, that's the devil. Because
no, it's a great question. I don't think actually that's sort of the way it happened. I mean, one of the things about me is, you know, I gravitate toward magical realism more than out and out horror. So I sort of like took that pathway, and, you know, things like God Friended Me, or like,
I was going to say, we can see that in the work.
Yeah, right. So, and I'm really grateful that that's been the case. So it was more about kind of like the fantasy elements for me, I think, in a way. And in terms of, you know, my parents agreeing or disagreeing, like my father was a big churchgoer, still is, and my mother's just not a churchgoer. So that was sort of the big sort of debate that they had, where mom would always stay home and dad was always there on Sunday. But in terms of me, I think they were just really happy to see me sort of thrive in whatever creative endeavor I was in. And they still are. They're cheering me on. So I'm really grateful for that.
That's awesome.
Now, Steve, I wanted to ask a question before we get away from it. You mentioned Salem's Lot. Did you, or do you yourself have a favorite King novel?
What a great question. Wow, that's deep.
One that I found myself listening to. I listen to a lot of Audible at work. I'm sort of a delivery driver of sorts. And it was The Night Flyer. And it's kind of a short one.
I know that one.
No, it's a Stephen King short.
Okay.
It's not very long at all, but it was just, the more I listen, of course I've listened to the It and the things like that, but it's just, he was very good with his word usage. It's just extremely good. I don't think he gets enough credit. People just know him for it. But what was your favorite? Do you have one?
Well, you know, I remember reading, first of all, I have to say that one of the things, because, you know, as I said, I'm sort of a little bit more into fantasy stuff. So I only get so close to horror before I feel like I have to back away. And one of the reasons for that is I remember my mother reading to me sections from Salem's Lot. You know? And just the way Stephen King kind of describes, I remember that scene, I can't remember the characters' names, but, you know, the two brothers who are sort of on their way, they're like walking home and it's late at night, and one of them is about to, you know, get attacked by the vampire, but they're just, the banter there just reminded me of me and my brother, and I just felt so connected to those characters that I started getting really scared for them. Like, you know, we're sitting in the kitchen, my mother's opening this book and reading it. So that's, I certainly remember that, but I also remember I read The Stand cover to cover, and that was
so good.
Such a good book.
And the show was really well done too.
Yeah, I actually didn't. I saw part of it actually.
Okay, it's really well done.
Yeah, I heard good things about it. But I also he wrote a terrific book on writing. So Stephen King on writing is you know, it's obviously not a horror.
His ability.
He talks about his history.
Right.
It's a terrific book.
I'm gonna look into that. Thank you very much. And I think that's too, you know, when you're writing, his balance of fiction and nonfiction, I think, is where it is. He has this ability to really connect you with his characters, and just like you said, with you know, reminding you of your relationship with your brother. And I think that's what it is. He has a very good ability of drawing people in. So
to piggyback off of that, like I 100% agree with you, because it's like look at It, for example, and then when you see Ben, you know what I'm saying, it's just like when he was younger, he was always brave, but you know, he was the fat kid, you know what I'm saying, but then he grows up, you know, he betters himself, and you know, John Ritter, he played him in the original movie, and it's just like, hey, he was a good looking man, you know, he was a ladies man now, and you know, it's like I can connect with Ben when I was younger, and then I can connect with him now as an adult, because it's like, you know, I was bigger when I was younger, and then I grew up, and then it's like I started taking care of myself, hitting the gym all the time. So it's like, I agree when you say that. It's like he writes characters that you can connect with. And I feel like when you're an author and you can, you know, make these interesting characters, I mean, even going to you, Steve, like when you watch shows like God Friended Me or Stargirl, and it's just like you can connect to these characters that are on the show just because of how well written they are.
Yeah,
Thank you for saying that. I really
You're welcome.
It's
For sure.
That's the thing that I love the most, and really the substance of my job. Because we, especially on Stargirl, similarly on God Friended Me, we're in there talking about human emotion, talking about, it's our entire day in the writer's room is, stuff like, well, wouldn't this just happen to Courtney? So wouldn't she feel blah, blah, blah? Or how does she, I'm not sure about how she's going to react to such and such. Or, I would feel like this in this situation. And we just pour all that stuff that comes out of our own hearts into these characters, because I think that's what makes these shows so relatable.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And it's like I want to save Stargirl for the end. I mean, well, once we move along, but like Yolanda, for example, even though I've never been in a situation like she has on the show, I can relate with that a little bit, because it's like I know people that have been through that situation when it's come to sexting and their photos getting out and whatnot, and I feel bad for her, and then especially because of how it affected her family and whatnot, and how she's viewed by everybody in the town and whatnot. So it's just like I'm sure anybody that's ever been through that situation, it's like they can look at her character and like see how she kind of became a turtle and she went inside her shell. But then when she had the support of Courtney that came out and was able to show her like, hey, that wasn't your fault. You know what I'm saying? And you can grow from this. It's like you don't have to stay in your shell forever. So that's something I just wanted to say. But before we moved along, because I wanted to ask you some questions about your acting career and whatnot, I wanted to ask you a question because you said that you would make your own comics and stuff like that when you were younger. Like, who were some of your favorite comic book characters that inspired you to even want to do that type of stuff?
Yeah, well, you can't see all of my office, but I've got a Captain America shield over there, and I've got a Spider-Man original over here, and Spider-Man really was my absolute favorite, I have to say.
Great pick.
Yeah,
nice right? Peter Parker, just struggling through high school, trying to be a normal teenager, and also recognizing that he had these incredible powers, and the whole sense of kind of the angst that he had, and the fear and the frustration, and how do I use these gifts? To me, there's something so universal about that in every superhero story, but Spider-Man is hands down my favorite character of all time.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I've noticed that Spider-Man seems to be the most relatable for kids when it comes to superheroes. Like, I'm not a huge Spider-Man fan anymore like I was when I was a kid. Like, my fandom for Spider-Man was really strong when I was a kid. And that could be because I grew up in the 90s with the TV shows and the cartoons and stuff. But also, I just think he's so relatable for children versus other superheroes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, there's something about his origin, I think, too, that he was a normal kid to a certain point. You can't say that for like a Superman who was never a normal kid.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why I find him so relatable.
I will say, just since you mentioned Superman, I will say that his story is kind of interesting for as strong of a character as he is, because it's basically like, they're trying to humanize him, trying to show him the way.
Yeah.
And I do like in recent time that you get to see, whether it's Smallville, Superman, Lois, things like that, you get to see more of what they taught him, and, seeing him kind of more, how do you say it? Memorialize his parents, basically, with losing them and stuff. And I like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Peter's a struggling kid. He basically lives in an okay neighborhood, I guess. But, he doesn't have much. Yeah. So you can relate how many kids have grown up raised by their grandparents,
Right.
So yeah, Peter's that guy.
And same thing with Captain America. You know what I'm saying? Like, seeing how, especially like when he first started and seeing his origin story, and then
he didn't have anything.
He didn't have
Dirt
anything,
poor.
but he had a good heart. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And it's like, that's why I love that, because it's just like he didn't have anything, but he was brave. He always, he always protected other people. You know what I'm saying? And like, that's why I love his character. Now, Steve, I wanted to ask you, are you excited about the Spider-Man No Way Home movie that's coming out soon?
I'm curious about it. I feel like all of these drips and drabs of like, this is happening, this isn't happening, like it's going to be these people. And, I'm really curious about it. And so I'm dying to know what the deal is exactly.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. And I'm also super excited about the Into the Spider-Verse sequel too.
Oh, absolutely!
Yeah. That movie is off the hook.
That's what I'm more excited about, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, I can't wait for both of those because Into the Spider-Verse 2 comes out next year, right?
I don't.
Or did they push it back?
I'm not sure on the release.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was coming out next year, but it's fine. We can go ahead and move along. So, Steve, I want to ask you this now. It's just like you said, you were a senior in high school, and like that's when you got your first agent and whatnot. Like, how was it on your first acting gig? Like, do you remember that? Like, were you scared? Were you nervous, or did you go in there just
terrified? Scary. It was great, but it was scary, and it also, one of the things that I think was really useful in retrospect is, I got my first agent as a senior in high school, but then I didn't book any jobs for years. I would go to auditions and I was taking classes and all this stuff. And all the way through high school, at the end of high school and then into college, of course I worked, I did stuff like at school, both high school and college, but I didn't actually get a job until after I graduated college. So it was all those years of auditioning, of like meeting casting directors and, failing and not getting things and all that stuff, that I finally landed something. And then it was just amazing. It was just like, oh, wow, this is, and it was scary. So this is, this is the big time, here I am in front of people and, they want me to deliver and all of that, so, but again, I think on some level, what you do is in any of these aspects, and I'm sure you guys know that, like you practice and you practice and you practice, you learn the craft. And then when you're there, you're able to, hopefully you're able to channel that stuff that you already know, that you've been studying for all this time. And, and you can go out there and do some good work with the help of a director and good co-stars and all of that stuff. That's a really powerful opportunity.
Yes, it is, for sure.
Now, because earlier you had said that, growing up, it's just like you were writing stuff, you were creating stuff. So it's just like you've always kind of been somebody that's been a jack of all trades. And I know when we had interviewed Ken Michael, he was on the Parenthood. And, he had been acting since he was a kid and whatnot, being a child actor. And then eventually you reach that age when you're on, I think he said it's like once you're a teenage actor, like that's kind of where it's just like, Trav, what was it? It's like they don't know where to send you at because of how old you are. They don't
really know what to do with you. You're limited, I guess.
Yeah. So something that he did was, because he grew up in music and he learned other crafts while he was acting. So that way that, if he couldn't get any acting gigs, he could still do stuff behind the scenes, like with music on TV shows. So I want to ask you, you were acting. What was it that led you to say, hey, like I want to start writing, or I want to start producing shows?
Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, I should say that that first acting job was a syndicated series called Monsters. And it was an episode called My Zombie Lover, written by a guy named David Mish, who's still around, who was a writer for Mork and Mindy, and a very funny, very strong comedy writer. And Monsters was an anthology series where there was like a different monster every week. I was on this episode that I was on was me opposite Tempest Bledsoe. And she basically, on the night of the dead, when the zombies come back from the dead, I come back and I'm a zombie who's somebody she went to high school with who got killed in a car accident. And so, and we sort of, in that half hour we end up together. So it was super fun and really interesting to sort of jump into something that was where I was really at the center of it. But the reason I bring that up is that doesn't happen all the time as an actor. So as an actor, it's really about you just roll the dice, and you could be the lead in one thing, and then you're the next door neighbor in the next, or you just don't get cast in this, or you do a play and you go do regional theater, and you're somewhere out in Cincinnati for 6 months, and then you come back, and then it's all this sense of trying to sort of put things together, which became for me really frustrating after a while. There was a period of time when I felt like I was living out of a box. I would take my box to Minneapolis, I would take my box to West Virginia, and after a while, it's kind of like, I want to be home. I want to be like in some more semblance of maybe a little bit more control of my life. I want work that feels a little steadier. And all of that sort of started to move me toward the writing space, because I just thought, like, if I'm a writer, which of course is true now, like, I can put myself to work. Obviously there are times when that work, I will be paid for that work, and there are times when I won't. But you can't really do that as an actor. You can't just be like, I'm going to act today. Like, you could practice, but as a writer, I can literally write the writing I do right now. If I did some stuff right now, it's the same keystrokes and process as if I'm doing it for Stargirl or God Friended Me or American Crime. It's the exact same impetus to put myself to work. And I think that the one other thing I want to say about that sort of led to all of that was, at some point I moved from New York to Baltimore, and I thought that I was just kind of like going to change my life and like leave the industry and all this stuff. And I ended up sort of by happenstance hosting a kid show. I hosted this kid show with this other guy. It was the Fox 45 Clubhouse was the name of the show. We came on in between the cartoons. And what was really interesting is I got to produce it. I got to co-produce it. I got to write the segments that we did. And I was, of course, in it. And so It was the first opportunity for me to do everything. It was obviously this sort of small space compared to Monsters and the kinds of things that I'd done sort of in the national sphere. But the idea of suddenly being a writer and a producer and, generating ideas, and that really taught me that I could do more than just be in front of the camera, that whatever it looked like, there was the opportunity for me to kind of invent as well as perform. And that's really what taught me that I could do more stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's crazy.
You never know where life's going to take you, man.
Yeah, for sure. We were like, we had a magazine, and we were hosting telethons. We were having appearances in malls. We're signing autographs. This show, which was made in Baltimore, was seen in 5 states. And we were so incredibly popular. And it was just like this kind of instant, kind of energetic hit and creative high. And when I left that job, I said to myself, it doesn't get better than this. It gets bigger than this.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than this.
Yeah, because
I like that mindset though.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, even though it's like you were still on screen, it's like you were doing more stuff behind the scenes. And like how you said, like it became very popular. And who wouldn't want to, travel to like all these locations? And, I love kids. I feel like kids, it's just like they're always going to be honest. They're always going to be 100 with you. You know what I'm saying? And for them to, love this show, like that goes a long way, man. Now, I want to ask you, because you did some work on American Crime, and see, like, that's what I always love about when we interview people, because it's like I do a deep dive into learning about our guests that we're going to have up here. Now, we interviewed Christopher Dontrell Piper back when we first started our podcast, and he played Malik on the show. And I remember when we had him up here, he was just, praising the show, saying that how awesome it was to work with the cast, especially Regina King, because he had been a fan of hers when he was a kid and whatnot.
Amazing.
And I just want to ask you, like, how was it working on this show? Because like this was a serious show. It dealt with real issues, and it goes to what you were saying early on. It's just like you want to tackle these real issues when it comes to writing shows and stuff like that. So
yeah, again, one of the fascinating things for me about working on that show, first of all, John Ridley is a brilliant writer and a super cool guy. He and I are still friends today, and he's just amazing. And he also has, he and I have worked on trying to produce some things, and I continue to be connected to him. But it was just, I was talking before in the acting space about how I auditioned for things for several years before getting them. And American Crime was no different. So the first season of American Crime, I had gone in, I had met with John, I had met with the producer, Michael McDonald, and nothing happened. Like, they didn't hire me.
Right.
So then my agent, the second year of the show, my agent said, we think you're going to get another meeting on this show. And then I didn't get another meeting. And then the third season, a whole bunch of things happened to sort of conspire to. I had a, I created this web series that we may end up talking about that like did incredibly well and got an Emmy nomination and all this stuff. And nice. I had heard about through my agent that John Ridley was having this party. We had the same agent. He was having a party, basically for all of the writers of color at the agency.
Right.
And other people were invited, but and I just found out about this on Thursday. The agent calls me. This is a Thursday, and she's like, we're having this party. It's tonight. We'd like, can send you an invitation, blah, blah, blah. So I go to the party. And one of the things I learned about in creating the web series, which is a whole long story, but I read this book called Crowdfunding for Filmmakers, which I totally recommend, by this guy named John Trigonis. And one of the things he says, he's a super cool guy too. He helped me do crowdfunding for my web series and gave me a lot of advice and stuff. But one of the things he said is have a business card for whatever project you're working on that has all your information on it, because you're going to tell people about it and you're at a party or whatever, and they're not going to remember what's the website, what's the URL, what's it really called, who is that guy again, right? So I was carrying my cards around, and I'm with a friend of mine. A friend of mine comes up to me at the door, who I didn't even know was going to be there, and she says, I want to make sure that you get face to face with John, because he's a friend of my family's and all this stuff. And I had met him, years ago before for season 1 of American Crime. And I was like, great. So at some point I'm mingling, I'm talking to people. This friend of mine swings around and she introduces me to this woman. We're talking, I'm chatting, and she's telling this woman about me and about the web series and stuff. And somewhere in the middle of this conversation with this woman, I realized this is John Ridley's wife.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking to John Ridley's wife about my web series. So I described it to her. She was really interested in it. It's called Send Me. It's about a Black woman who sends Black people back in time to the days of slavery, and people want to go because the way people want to jump out of airplanes or do dangerous drugs.
Right.
So I tell her about it, and she's like, "That sounds really interesting." And I'm like, "I have a card. Here's the card."
Always
I hand her the business card. She takes it. She's like, "Oh, I'll check it out." And so then a little while later, my friend Katrina comes again and ushers me over to John, who's standing there in the corner, sort of, holding court. And sort of the waves part, and people leave, and Katrina reintroduces us, and I thank him again for being so kind when I met him several years ago. I tell him about the web series. He was like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting. Where can I see this?" And I said to him, "I gave your wife the card. She has the card." Right. And so that was my re-meeting with him. And I think it was a day or two later, I got a call from my agent that he wanted to meet again. And so I got to meet him for the second time, and then and also Michael McDonald, the other producer. And within a week from that moment, I was offered the job. So, it's one of those things where just the universe was conspiring to help me, all of these things that I did to get to that space where that door opened again was part of the miracle of getting on that show.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you had brought Send Me up, because before you had started talking about it, I had checked it out, and the concept of the show, like, it sounds very interesting. And I will say that, again, with the deep dives, and when we have our guests come up here, just hearing about Send Me, and then also you talking about monsters, like, these are things that I didn't know about, Trav didn't know about, Dee didn't know about, and our viewers and listeners didn't know about. So I highly recommend checking this stuff out, because it's just like, we're all fans of horror, you know what I'm saying? And, just seeing that you played a zombie on Monsters, that's definitely something that I want to check out. And then just hearing the plot, a short plot of Send Me, and how people want to go back in time and, you know, experience slavery, and how well, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I'm definitely going to check it out. It sounds interesting, and yeah. As where can we watch this at? Do we just type in Send Me online, yes, and we can watch it? So okay, all right, cool.
It originally premiered on BET.com in February of 2016, and we got like 1.66 million views in that month.
Nice.
Amazing.
Wow.
Currently it's on YouTube. So if you look on YouTube for Send Me web series, you'll find it. And there's also information on there's a website which is sendmebacktoslavery.com, which is pretty memorable. And you can see a lot of information about the show on that website, who the actors are, what the concept is, all of that. And then there's a link on that site to the show itself.
All right, cool. Well, definitely when this video does get put on YouTube, I will include the link so that way everybody that's watching, y'all can go and check this stuff out, and then we can show support, because it's just like when we have guests up here, like I said, we like Olive Garden, we family. So we support everybody that we have come up here with us. Now, I want to get to God Friended Me, because this was a show that I really enjoyed when it was first announced, because I was a fan of Brandon Michael Hall. He was on The Mayor on ABC.
Yes, that's right.
And, you know, I had like his acting is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? So when I saw that he was going to be on God Friended Me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to support him, because I was so heated when The Mayor got canceled, because I thought it was a good show, and it didn't even get its, I think the final 2 episodes never aired on ABC because it got canceled. So I was really disappointed by that. But when I saw that he was going to be on God Friended Me, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to check this show out. And I was hooked on the first episode, especially with the whole concept of, you know, him having his own podcast. And we were just starting our podcast at the time when the show first started. And, you know, I was really disappointed when it came out that, you know, season 2 was going to be the last season, because I just felt like that there was so much more that you could do on this show. So before I get to like those type of questions, I want to ask you, you know, how was it working on God Friended Me? Because I know earlier too, you said, you know, you love to, you know, have a challenge. You love to, you know, talk about these real world issues. And with God Friended Me, I just love that it was a show where it's just like not the cast, but the actors on the show, they wanted to help people. They were positive, and you know, I thought the whole concept for the show was just amazing. So, like, how was it working on that show?
Yeah, I was so grateful to be on that show, and it was really fun. First of all, shout out to the creators, Stephen Lillian and Brian Winbrandt, you know, who came up with such a brilliant idea and a really fun one. You know, this sort of mix of this sort of religious space and technology, and you know, and yet the show was really about, on some level, it was about helping people, and it was about sort of getting to the truth of this mystery of what or who is behind the God account. So I found that really, really interesting, really relatable. It was so fun for me to see a Black family on TV too. You know, that's always cool. And Brandon, who is terrific in the role and a really fantastic person to work with. Brandon had been Juilliard, and I had also been to Juilliard as a playwright. And so we had a lot of mutual friends. And so from the moment I met him, you know, it was just really great. We connected, and the whole cast, Javizia Leslie, and it's just a really great group of people, professional, fun, kind. I feel like the stories we were able to tell and the energy on the set was always positive. And that's one of the things I think about, you know, what I do in the industry, and I'm sure that, again, you guys relate as well in all of the things you do. Like, I don't only want to be on a show that on TV is good.
Yeah.
I want it to be good on TV, but I also want to work with good people, right? I want it to feel as good and comfortable behind the scenes as it is, as the show is good on screen. And this was one of those shows, you know, it was just, terrific group of like 10 writers, really good people. And then for me, the show, the writer's room is here in LA, but, you know, we shot in New York. And so I got to go home. I got to like hang out with my brother and my family, and, you know, and go take these trips to New York, you know, producing my episode, and then hang out with my folks on the weekend. It was kind of a dream. It was really fun.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. I mean, it's nothing like being in your home state and working there. You know what I'm saying? Compared to, you know, where you would normally be working at if you were in a different state or a different country. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing better than being at home, you know, hanging with the family, getting the, you know, the local foods in the area and stuff like that. And, you know, I'll say that, you know, with God Friended Me, at the end of every episode, it always had me feeling good. You know what I'm saying? It was always a feel good moment because, you know, just showing how one person can go out of his way to help somebody and make a difference. Like, I thought that was an interesting take. I will say that when the show was first announced too, you know, I was wondering, I was just like, well, you know, you really don't see a lot of religious shows on TV. I remember growing up, the last religious show I remember seeing was Seventh Heaven. You know what I'm saying? And it was just interesting that you had this show. It tackled, you know, people's sexualities. It tackled, I can't remember if there was one where it tackled racism. I can't remember because it's been so long since I watched the show, but it's like there were all these issues where it tackled, and I just loved it. Also, too, you know, having Joe Morton on the show, I always say, if Joe Morton is in a TV show or a movie, he's always going to be somebody's dad, and he always knocks it out of the park. It's him, and I'm mad I can't remember the other guy's name. He plays, he's Cyborg's dad on Doom Patrol. I'm mad I can't remember his. Do you know, Trav?
Oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Because he always plays fathers too in TV shows and movies.
Absolutely.
And he's Silas Stone. What is his name? I'm about to look it up. D, start talking.
Yeah. I mean, to me, one of the things that I found really interesting on that show was, you know, I agree with you, like the family aspect and the ways in which we could create drama between the family, and yet the family was always, you know, they would always come back together, you know, which I think, you know, is part of what I think happens in real life. Like, you know, we fight and we sort of reunite or reform in some way, shape, or form. I mean, the other thing too, you talk about the subject matter. I think CBS has often had a history of these kinds of shows. You know, you mentioned Seventh Heaven, but you know, CBS had Touched by an Angel.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
Joan of Arcadia. You know, there's kind of a lane of those kinds of shows that they do every now and then, and I think those two shows actually were more religious than our show.
Oh, absolutely.
Our show, you know, Stephen and Brian, like one of them considers himself a believer and the other considers himself an atheist, and they're writing partners and good friends, you know. And so they were bringing both of their perspectives into that show, and not really tipping the scales either way, you know, was sort of the intention.
Yeah, I never looked at it as a religious show. I mean, I get if you see the name, obviously that's what you go to, but I never felt like anything like, I mean, you brought up Touched by an Angel and stuff. I mean, that's pretty much. Yeah, it's got angels and all this stuff in it, and you know, it's Seventh Heaven. The dad's a preacher and a pastor and all that stuff. But this was just about good people doing good things for people, and you can either way. You could be religious or not religious, and still take away from the show, and that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah,
it's always a lesson,
and I just
always a lesson.
I love the character development and how. You know, the characters, they changed as the series progressed, and they came to, you know, respecting somebody's sexuality or respecting that that Miles, he was an atheist, you know what I'm saying? But he could still believe that, hey, maybe God does exist because of all of this stuff that I'm doing to help people. It's like the whole concept of the show. Like, it was a good concept, and I was so disappointed when it got canceled because I just felt like that there was so much more that could have happened on the show, especially when we see the season finale, and it's just like, now Miles, I believe, was he in Tibet?
He was in Tibet.
He was in Tibet. So now was it because of COVID that the show had to come to an end, or?
Well, you know, it's funny. I love that question. First of all, one thing I want to say is I don't think I've been on any show where the people on the show, we all stayed in touch. Like, you know, we finished season 2.
Right.
And we didn't know whether it was going to get picked up or not because we were waiting to hear and all that stuff. And we had several gatherings. gatherings. We had several Zoom gatherings and stuff. COVID was just happening actually while they were filming the last episode of the season. And we were in touch. There were, people on the show, the writers and such, who I'm still in touch with, and all of that. And I'm still cheering on those actors, Javicia, as Batwoman, and Brandon's on Broadway now, and Trouble in Mind, so there was a real connection, I feel like, among us. But I also think that on some level, even inside the bubble, it's just as confusing as, for us as it is for the viewers. Like, I can't tell you why it didn't come back. Like, we were all like, oh, let's do another season. Yeah. And then we find out that it's not happening. I mean, I think, one of the things economically that I know, that we do know, is, the show was jointly owned by Warner Brothers and CBS. And one of the things that we know is that companies like to sort of own it all and make all the money. Yeah. So, but outside of that, like, for example, Stargirl is a show owned by Warner Brothers, and on the CW, which is also, owned by Warner Brothers. So there's sort of like, it's all in-house. Yeah. And so perhaps the economics suggest that that's why it was canceled, but I don't really know. I'm just as clueless as you.
Now, let me ask you this, and this is my final question for Guy Friended Me. If there was a season 3, or if you can talk about it, like, where would the show had gone? Because I mean, I thought it was a good wrap up. Everybody ended up getting back together and everything, because it's like, I thought that Kara and Miles, they were gonna, spoiler alert, this guy, it's like they kind of had a rough patch, but then they patched things up. They ended up getting back together. But it's like, I kind of feel like if the show didn't come to an end, we would have still seen the direction that their characters went in and whatnot. So, if the show didn't come, go ahead. Sorry.
It's an interesting story, because the season 2 finale that we had, that had been written, that was being shot when they had to shut down for COVID, was different.
Right.
And all of the drama was still going to continue, and there was a cliffhanger and all this stuff. Right. They found out, Stephen and Brian found out, that the show was not getting renewed. And then they came up with the brilliant idea of how to end it. And they basically created that series finale out of bits and pieces that they had from other episodes, with some editing magic. They basically rewrote and recomposed that last episode to feel like the series was ending. But none of that had been shot with the idea that the series was ending. Yeah. And in fact, if you go back and see it now, if you're able to find it, I think perhaps on Paramount Plus, you'll see how so much of the last section of that episode is voiceover from Miles and footage of, like, it's like they didn't shoot that stuff. And the thing with Miles in Tibet, and this is really interesting, the thing with Miles in Tibet climbing the mountain and getting to see this, sort of young guy who says, says what he says at the end, that was shot for the pilot.
Oh, wow.
That's wild.
And had been cut from the pilot, and they saved it.
Wow.
And then they brought it back at the series finale to say that this is where Miles ended up. Yeah. So all of that stuff was like, TV movie magic to compose.
Yeah, that's genius.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and really it was a good way to, end it, because you have so many shows where it's like they get canceled and
there's no ending.
Yeah, there's no ending. It ends on a cliffhanger. So I will say that was one of the things that I did love, was that when the show ended, it's just like, this is it. And I mean, it kind of ends on a cliffhanger because Miles is in Tibet. So it's like, if the door ever opens up and, you have Paramount Plus, I mean, like Evil, season 2 of Evil, like that came on Paramount Plus, and you just never know, I mean, the world is starting to open back up again. I know Glow, that was a show on Netflix, like that got canceled while they were doing season 3. And I'm still hoping that, they pick the season back up and then they finish the season, because season 3 or season 2, I think season 2 ended on a cliffhanger. No, I'm sorry, it was season 4. No, season 4.
Oh yeah, you're right, there was 4 seasons.
Yeah, so season 3 ended on a cliffhanger, and then season 4, I know that they had started production, and then because of the pandemic, they were just like, hey, we're just canceling the show. So I'm just hoping with the world opening back up and things kind of going back to normal, that we get a proper season 3 for God Friendly Me, because I would love to watch that show and see all of the characters. And then now you have to go with what happened at the season 2 finale, where it's just like, characters got back together and stuff like that. Like, what are they doing now? So,
well, I love the fan fiction of it, but I don't think it's likely. The two creators who I'm still in touch with, they're currently working on La Brea, which is doing very well.
That is such a good show.
Right. And they've got some other projects in the works as well. I know, Brandon is on Broadway, Javicia's Batwoman, Joe Morton is on another show as well. Like, I just don't know. I love the idea of it. But I don't know that it's really going to happen.
I was going to say.
Go ahead, Trav.
No, I was going to say also Brandon just voiced
Cyborg.
Cyborg in the Injustice movie. So there's another comic.
Yes, right.
Doing from the cast of this show, and you doing Stargirl and all this stuff where it just comes back to comics.
The small world, man.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, something I was going to say too, to go back to a question that we were talking about earlier. The actor's name is Phil Morris. He always
Phil Morris.
Morris. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's just like I always say, if Joe Morton or Phil Morris is going to be the father on the show, it's going to be fire. they always knock it out of the park. And then plus, it's like Joe, he was Silas Stone in the Justice League movie, and I love that his role was more expanded on in the Snyder cut than the original, because in the original, it's like they took him out like that, but. It's just like, he played Victor's father well. And, like I said, Joe Morton, he always knocks it out of the park. Yeah, so moving along to Stargirl, and I see D, he has the smile on his face because, we're huge fans of the show. And, we reviewed season 2. We were every week, and I tell D all the time, I was just like, man, it's just so weird when Tuesday comes around and there's no Stargirl on.
I know. I'm feeling the same. The withdrawal is really palpable.
Sure. It is. But, I mean, something that me and D always mention is how we love the fact that the series, the episodes, it's only 13 episodes. So it's just like you get everything. Like, there's no breaks in between and everything. And it gets you pumped for the next season. So, D, I've been rambling for a lot. I'll let you take the ball and you can ask the first question.
Hey, look, we know what you do around here. No, but it was just phenomenal show. Well done, sir. I just want to say.
I appreciate it.
And once again, we talked about the ability to connect with people. And I feel like Stargirl does a good job with all the character conflicts. They have their own individual problems and they have to come together and save the day. Blue Valley. And I just I really like a lot of the characters. Rick, you got Courtney and everybody, the whole gang. And I just like the combination of all the different extremes that they're going through in their own households.
Right.
And then they're bound, and then at the end of the day they have to balance being basically a superhero team in training. Right. So it's It reminds me of Teen Titans in a way. Very relatable because this is basically like a young JSA basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I like it. Thanks.
Thank you. I think
go ahead, Mr. Steve.
Well, I think one of the things that's so cool about it for me is, first of all, I thank you for Benjamin for reminding me of one of the challenges of God Friended Me was we kept getting preempted. I don't know if you remember that. So because CBS has all of these things that happen on Sunday night. So there would be the Emmys and there'd be the People's Choice. And I remember walking down the street or people who knew I worked on the show saying when's God Friended Me coming back? Where did it go?
Trust me, I was heated.
Right? but it is one of the joys of Stargirl is that it is 13 in a row. And, except for, I think, occasionally my parents in New York, it gets preempted for baseball games or whatever. But, it's pretty much 13 in a row, which is really great. And the other thing that I love about it, which I've never experienced on any other show I've been on, is that people are so connected to those comics, the original comics Jeff Johns wrote, and our fans are all over there's a Facebook group, people are tweeting, including you guys, just people are so thrilled with getting to see these incarnations of Courtney and Yolanda and you know, all
Our
the
Man,
characters,
all
Our Man, and
Yep, all of
you
them.
know, all of them, Dr. Midnight. And so I feel like we really benefit from the energy and enthusiasm of the fans. It's really, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like that energy.
And for sure, another thing too, you mentioned, you know, the JSA characters. It's, to me, it's something that I talk to about the guys a lot when we do our reviews and things. Is this is kind of a fresh take. I always want DC to shine some light on the other comics. There's so many of them out there, and this is exactly what this was, a breath of fresh air. Down to the costume designs, the choreographics on the show. It's just very fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm
and
so glad
just
to
kind
hear
of
that.
take it in.
I have to give all praise to Jeff Johns, who is, you know, not only created the show and
it's his
our
baby.
showrunner, but it's his baby. So, here's what's happening right now, which happens every season. So the show is filming right now. They're filming the 5th and 6th episodes of season 3.
Nice.
I wrote episode 5, so I'm watching the dailies, and I'm like, oh, I love that. Whatever. But the thing is, Jeff is there all the time. So we have our writer's room, and it's on Zoom, you know, just like this. But Jeff is there on the ground. He's there talking to the choreographers. He's there talking to the actors. He's there talking to the directors. He's with he's in the costume department. He's there choosing locations. So
and
all
it shows
that stuff that really works. That shows the quality that's there is because he is, you know, super involved in every aspect.
Nice.
And I mean, that's why you don't take these shortcuts, Banks.
No, I was just gonna say, like, it's always awesome when you have like the creator of a series on board, because I know we always talk about how with Dragon Ball Evolution, Akira Toriyama, like he wasn't hands on with that because it's like they were just doing their own thing. I guess they didn't want him to be a part of that, and then we see how horrible that movie turned out. But it's just like I love the fact that with a lot of, you know, projects now, you know, you have the creators, because Cowboy Bebop, which is coming out soon. You have the creators from the series working on the Netflix series, so it's like they're making sure that their baby isn't tarnished, because it's just like the last thing you want to do is to, you know, create a classic that everybody knows and loves, and then somebody else, you give it to somebody else, and then it's just like they just drop it.
I think it's a double down, you know, in a way, because if you don't nurture it, people are already, you know, word of mouth and things like that. They're already, you know, Cowboy Bebop's Cowboy Bebop. So people will come.
Exactly.
Death Note is Death Note. Superman is Spider-Man. All these big type people grew up with this stuff. So if you don't, you know, handle it right, you know, you're going to overcook it.
Yeah. So people will come, but the question is, will they stay?
Exactly.
They only stay if the quality is there and the care.
Correct.
And that's why we stay for Superman and Lois, and that's why we stay for Stargirl.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is correct.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, for Stargirl, I know originally it was on the DCU app.
That's
and then it started coming on the CW. It started coming on the CW, and he was the first person to say, hey, you guys should check out Stargirl. It's pretty good. And it's like, I remember I started watching it because it got put on HBO Max, and I was hooked. And I just love how, you know, originally it was on this app, the DC app, and then it came on the CW, and with season 2, it's like it still feels like it's its own thing. It doesn't feel like it's like the other CW shows.
Not to knock this.
Yeah, I'm so glad to knock them. Yeah, no, I'm so glad to hear that. And we actually have that conversation too in the writers' room.
Right.
You know, Jeff has worked on a lot of the other DC shows as well, and we're aware of, you know, things that we do that the other shows aren't doing. I think it's really fascinating to me too. I was a fan of the show before I was a writer on it.
Right.
I had read a review that said it was pretty good, and I started watching, you know, when it was on the CW, right after it had been on the app, and I was like, this is really good. And I watched several episodes, and then, you know, sort of out of the blue, for me at least, one of my manager actually reached out and said, you know, Stargirl is looking for a writer, and we're setting up a meeting for you and stuff. And I was like, that show is really good. Like, I've seen it. So I was able to say that to Jeff. Like, I didn't even have, in fact, I found out, this is another interesting story. I got word about having a meeting with Jeff the day I had the meeting with Jeff. And I think it was the morning, like they tell me that I have a meeting, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning, and then the meeting was at like 3 o'clock that afternoon or something like that. And so I had time to maybe rush and like watch one other episode, on the CW website. But I was able to talk about it because I'd been watching it already. And it's so fun. And I think one of the things too that we've been at least dealing with from the transition from season 1 to season 2 is that because season 1 was made for the app, that was made like commercial free, just like any streaming show. And then when it went on the CW, if you ever look back at those episodes, which, now they're on HBO Max, so they run together. But when they were on the CW, they had commercials in really odd places and stuff like that because it wasn't made for commercials, right? So with season 2 and season 3, we now build the show knowing what those commercial breaks are and like building to the cliffhanger that we know has to happen because they have to like sell stuff in between. And that's a fundamentally different way of building a TV show than if you're not trying to hit those benchmarks.
Yeah. And I really love how there's a lot of positivity in this conversation about Jeff Johns, because there's just not a lot of that on the internet, for him and all the situations with big Warner Brother movies and the tug of war with him and Snyder and then Ray Fisher and all this stuff. So, and I'm one of these guys where people could say things online and those things may be true, like that's their truth or whatever, but I never really judge that person based on other people's experiences because everybody has their own experience with another individual.
Yes. And
it's nice to come up here because I've always been a fan of Jeff Johns since the New 52 when he came into DC. It was writing all the Justice League stuff. So it's nice to come on here and be like, Jeff Johns is doing this. And I feel that because, again, with Superman and Lois and Stargirl, him creating Stargirl and all this stuff, you can feel it's a passion project versus, and again, this is no knock on any other CW shows, but the CW seems to be a teenage girl drama kind of channel. And that's what those shows kind of, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's just their market of people. And this show's just so different than The Flash, like what The Flash has become and Green Hornet at the end and stuff like that. And you can just feel the passion in creating the show.
Yeah, Jeff just loves it. He's a great guy. Like I really enjoy working with him. And I feel like one of the things that I know too for being on this show and being on other shows is, and I don't know, I can't speak to what happened in these other spaces because I don't really know. Yeah. But I can say that it's really challenging. It can be really challenging to deal with the audience, the public, because there's just, I think we have a culture where there's the space of, it's so easy to criticize.
Yes.
Right. And there's a culture of like, you look at how many times people say, I hated that show. That guy should be shot. Or I don't like that actor. She should be killed. It's like, wait, what? What are we talking? What? You didn't like this. What? So, and I think at the end of the day, especially as you get closer to, working with, knowing these people, like they're people. Everybody's a person, right? And everybody sort of deserves the respect of personhood. I know that Jeff's not online. I know he's not on Twitter. I do a lot of Twitter stuff. I think it's really challenging. And I've seen it, even with respect to me, in terms of like people don't like an episode or people don't like a choice or people are upset with this or that. And then they want to sort of dump that into the pipeline of, the Twitter feed.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Like, it's a lot.
Yeah. And to, kind of piggyback off of that, because I know me and Dee, when we were doing our reviews, like one of the things, because I love Beth's character, I love that, she's Dr. Midnight, but I always felt that like all of the other characters on the show, it's like they were more further ahead of her, you know what I'm saying? Because
more character development.
Yeah, more character development. But then it's just like in season 2, it's like, you know, we see Beth's parents, it's like they're going through the divorce and everything like that. And it's kind of like she's still in this bubble, but then it's like, as the show continues on, we see her character develop, we see her growth. And then by the end of it, it's like, she's a badass. And,
yes, she is.
You know, and I feel like a lot of people, it's like they want that instant gratification. You know what I'm saying? Whereas instead, it's just like, you gotta let it marinate. You know what I'm saying? And then once you let it marinate, then you get that gratification, because it's just like, if it wasn't for Beth during the end of the season, the spoiler alert too, you know, the team, they would have all failed. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I love her development on the show. I love all of the characters' development. I think that, you know, going all the way back to season 1, like, the cast is phenomenal. The music is phenomenal. The actors that are a part of the show. And when season 2 got to the season finale, and like, I always look at, you know, who's going to be in the episode and stuff. And I had saw Keith David, and I was just like, Keith David, like, what's he going to do? And, you know, me and D, when I can't remember what episode it was where they were looking for Jade, and they go to the foster home.
Episode 9. 9 or 10, somewhere right there.
And I had told D, I was just like, hey bro, like, I looked that up, and that's an actual place in the comic. So I was like, I feel like for season 3, now that we have that, like, maybe that might be the backdrop for season 3. And then we get Keith David, and then he's Mr. Bones, and I was just like, yo, like, this is about to be dope.
This is one of those situations where, you know, it pays to have someone who's, you know, well versed in a topic being on hand. You know, you know, we talk about the Flash right now, Banks, just as an example of how, you know, some of the characters aren't comic worthy. You know, and I think
not comic worthy. They're not. They were created specifically for the show.
Well, that's what I mean. And you know, it's not. They're not comic characters. They're created for the show, and it's like, in this situation, I don't feel like you're going to get a lot of that.
No, I don't think we're going to get any of it. I mean, one of the things that I love too is, you know, with Jeff and James Robinson in the room, you know, and they are like veritable encyclopedias of everything.
Exactly.
Right.
And I mean, the rest of us, we're talking about, you know, we're pitching on emotional things and stuff like that. And Jeff and James are in the corner going, we should introduce this character. What do you think of, you know, and it just goes way over my head and all these other people. And then they'll be like, boom, we're bringing in blah, blah, blah. You know, we're all like, what? You know?
Yeah. And
it's amazing just the way they do that.
I just believe that it's an easy way when you have them there. Like you said, they're encyclopedias, and they, you know, it goes along with giving us fresh takes from DC, especially like more exposure to characters that aren't typically seen. And, you know, the villains come with that. And I can't wait to see what they come up with, to be honest.
Yes. I have to say that the most fun thing, one of the most fun things about my job is, you know, because of course I'm looking at the Facebook groups and I'm looking at the Twitter, and I'm, you know, hearing you guys say like, if this would be cool or whatever. Funnest thing is, like, the first day of this first week of a new season, like, Jeff has it all. There's always a plan. He's got it all sketched out. And so that first day we come in, we're like, okay, what are we doing? And he's like, here's what we're doing. And he lays out, and this is amazing. He will pitch the entire season. He'll be like, episode 1, we're doing this. Then this is the mystery. Then this thing drops. And then over here, we think it's this. And then this. And we get the whole map of the entire season.
Nice.
Like,
now you got to connect
first day. And then we got to build it. Right. So all of this stuff about, like, you could do this, you could do, like, the plan is already in the works, and he's so masterful at it. It's really exciting.
Well, and that's what I feel like made the other 2 Star Wars trilogies so good versus the new one, is it was, let's just come up with it as we go, versus this is the end. I mean, this is the beginning and this is the end. Now let's connect these dots along the way on how we get to these big plot points.
Yeah.
And you could, again, if the show ended tomorrow, and I mean, obviously we're getting to season 3, but if we didn't, you feel justification in that kind of being the end, even if you want more.
Now, something that I want to bring up is that I thought that because, you know, we are in the pandemic, or, you know, the pandemic was going on while filming was going on for season 2. I love the fact that the story took place in summer school. You know what I'm saying? So that way you didn't have to have that many people on set, and you were able to tell a story that didn't require that many characters. And you know, I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit on that. Like, did it make it easier for you guys? Because I know with certain shows, it's just like we have to go on hiatus until we can do something again. Whereas with this, it's just like, hey, put them in summer school and only have a few people on set, and then bam, you're good to go.
Yeah, well, straight from the mind of Jeff. I mean, you hit it right. You hit the nail on the head in terms of that, in terms of the ease of shooting and being able to have fewer people in the scenes and all of that stuff. You also got, which was also straight from the mind of Jeff, the opportunity to, you know, we know that these characters were, sophomores in the first season and juniors in the third season. So it's like, in order to just kind of stretch out the storyline before they graduate, it's just brilliant for him to put this whole season in summer school so that you're not pushing past the grade level that you need to have them in order to keep them at Blue Valley High.
Yeah, I definitely like that.
I was going to say something cool that Marvel did for Shang-Chi, because they released their behind the scenes episode for that movie, was there's a club scene, and you never notice it on film, but most of them are mannequins that are in the club. There's actually not a lot of people, and you never bat an eye the whole time. So, you know, hey, you take that back in you. Mannequins, way to go. You take that back, take that knowledge back with you, and you do what you want.
Hey, mannequins.
Go mannequins.
Down. I want to say 3 questions for Stargirl, and then that'll be it for me. The first question is, what was your favorite episode of season 2?
Well, I'm entirely biased. So, you know, episode 208, where Beth goes head to head with Eclipso, which I had the pleasure of writing, and which we as a group had really worked on to try to figure out how to, you know, it's very interesting. And I've talked about this before, like in the middle of all of the craziness that was happening, you know, of course, is still happening. All the stuff with George Floyd and the social unrest and all that stuff. Right. Warner Brothers and the CW executives came to us and said, "We want you guys to do something that speaks to race, that speaks to these issues in some way." You know, and so we came into the writers' room in the space of trying to figure out how we might do something that felt like the show, but still sort of touched on this area. And so the notion that Eclipso would, you know, attack Beth on the basis of her race and her gender, you know, taunt her in that way, which we were all kind of like, you know, it was a thought that, you know, that me and another writer sort of came up with. You know, that sense of doing that was a real risk for us. We were all really scared about it. And then fascinatingly enough, once we got it down on paper and showed it to the network and studio, they were both like, "Can you do it more? Can you turn this? Can you make it a little hotter? Can you do this? Can you do that?" You know, we got all this great feedback. So I'm super proud. That's my favorite episode of the season.
I mean, and it was a good episode, because I remember, because I usually watch the episodes on Tuesday, and then he'll watch it on the app the next day. And I remember I told him, I was just like, "Hey, bro, this episode with Beth, it's you know," but it goes back to what I was saying earlier about like her character development and her growth, because Eclipso knew that she was the weakest one of the team. And I just love by the end where it's like, you know, she levels up and she stands up to Eclipso, and he's just like, okay, she isn't one to be messed with. And
that's right.
Yeah, I really loved her development this season. So that was one of my questions. I know I said I had.
I also just have to give a shout out to Angelica Washington, because she was so fantastic in that episode, and she also not only like really took to the ideas we were doing, but she also had some suggestions for us, like, "Can I do this and can I say that?"
Right.
Nice.
You know, that line at the end where she says, you know, "I love being black," like that was 100% her. She was like, "Can I add this at the top of that?" You know, and it's just really, really beautiful work on her part.
Well, the other like thing, with Tom Holland, where
with Spider-Man,
it was Spider-Man, and he said, "I don't feel so good," and then that was ad-lib.
Well, that has already been confirmed. They changed the ending because when they were filming, he said, "This ain't it," and they went back to the drawing board and rewrote the ending. But the other thing I was going to say, what also makes it so scary, is that when you're dealing with real life critical situations like that, you want it to come off as an authentic message and not the big evil company trying to get views off of a specific group of individuals.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, Trav, because me and D, we were also doing reviews for Black Lightning. And I remember it was one of the episodes where it's like they kind of, it was a similar situation that had happened with Breonna Taylor. And like they showed like what would have had happened if there were actual superheroes and it took place in, you know, this world. And I thought that was a really powerful episode just because of how like they dealt with the situation and how Black Lightning and how Lightning, how they handled the situation and were able to take out the cops and stuff in that scene.
Right.
And like how you said, it's just like you want to make sure that it comes off real, it comes off authentic, because you know when you're watching something and it doesn't come off real and it's just like, they just put this there just to put it there, you know? So, you know, to go back to what you were saying, Steve, about like the episode and the situation with Beth and everything, like it felt real, you know what I'm saying? Like the stuff that Eclipso was saying to her, I was just like, like this is messed up. Like I can't believe that, you know, he's really saying this stuff to her in the episode.
Well, it also feels real because how many people probably have heard something similar?
Exactly.
Course, yes. And I think the other thing too that I found really fun was, you know, because before, as I said, before I was on the show, I'd watched the show and I saw that episode where Beth becomes Dr. Midnight. And as a Black person, I was like, wait, she's stealing those goggles. Like, wait a minute, she's walking in the court, you know. And so those things were already resonating in me. So when I got around to writing that scene, I was like, this is exactly what Eclipso would do. These are exactly the buttons that he would press, that she would potentially be sensitive about, that actually happened in the show.
Nice.
I like that.
So now, like I said earlier, I know I said I had 3 questions, but I only have. Oh yeah, I do have 3 questions. All right. So the second question is, you know, with Stargirl being the team, the JSA, you know, you have so many DC shows. You have, you know, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Superman and Lois. You have Titans and Doom Patrol on HBO Max. Yep. If you could choose a group of heroes for the JSA to team up with, who would you choose for them to team up with?
Wow, if I could choose, that is not where I thought you were going. If I could choose.
Here's his famous curveball, Trav.
Hey, that's what I do.
You had to ask one.
You know, I have to say, I mean, I don't, well, first of all, I have no responsibility for anything that's going to happen or isn't going to happen. But I've always been, you know, in my Marvel life, huge Spider-Man fan, as I've said. In my DC life, I've always been a huge Shazam, Captain Marvel fan. So I would love to see, just the kid in me would love to see Captain Marvel and the Marvel family sort of show up in Blue Valley. That would be
that would be awesome.
That would be sweet.
Like, can you imagine it's just like Courtney, she about to lose, and then all of a sudden you just hear Shazam. Like,
Shazam.
Yeah, that would be dope. That would be dope. And my final question, and without spoiling or, you know, whatever you can give away, what's something that you could tell us about season 3 that all of the fans should be looking forward to?
Well, I'm really only going to tell you what you already know. So I feel like, you know, we know from that last moment of season 2 that the Crocs have moved next door and this whole sort of frenemies thing. So it's really going to be this kind of, you know, smorgasbord of villains and heroes, you know, living side by side. And what does that do? What does that mean? Like, can they trust each other? You know, does that mean there's going to be no crime, no foul play? Or does that mean that when and if something does happen, it's harder to know who to trust?
Yeah.
Nice. I like that.
So that's my tease for season 3.
It's going to be interesting.
It is going to be. and me and D, we are going to be doing those reviews for season 3.
Excellent.
So yeah, that's all that I have to ask about Stargirl. D, did you have any more questions that you wanted to ask?
No, just keep up the great work. I do have my 2 wrap-up questions.
Okay.
And I'm going to get right into them.
All right.
Now, Steve, I like to ask all of our guests here. First question, favorite 80s or 90s movie coming up, or even now, something you might have discovered recently. 80s or 90s movie, or both if you have one of each.
Wow, it's hard to even know what's 80s and 90s, frankly. But I have to say,
we can help you out for the most part, sort of.
I have to say, and looking back at it as an adult, it's a problematic film. But I've always been a fan of Risky Business.
Right? That's wild.
Good movie.
I just saw it for the first time last year.
Oh wow!
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's got some problems to it, but
most 80s films, in all fairness.
Yeah, but it's
a good movie. Very mischievous decade.
Yeah,
a lot of mischievous.
And since we're coming up on the Christmas hour, we were talking about A Christmas Story, and like, if you really break down the story of that film, there's a lot of problems in that film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Quite a few.
That's what happens with a lot of movies from the 80s and 90s. It's just like, it worked at the time, but it's like watching it now.
A lot of that stuff gets you locked up or in trouble.
That Ace Ventura, age well.
I know, right?
Hey, you hear what they say about The Office? They always say stuff on The Office that didn't age well, and if it was airing in today's world, like the show, it wouldn't have made it past season 1.
Yeah,
glad that stuff came out when it did. But
I will say too, because you guys might find this really interesting. For both seasons that I've been on Stargirl, Jeff is really big on sort of like inspirational things. So we watch a lot of movies in the room. He'll be like, go watch. We watched It for season 2 of Stargirl. We watched.
That's something that me and D always said. Like,
we made that relationship.
We watched a lot of stuff. We watched The Haunting of Bly Manor. We watched
so good.
We watched Young Sherlock Holmes. All sorts of things. So we get to see a lot of 80s and 90s.
It's funny you said that because
we mentioned that all the time.
It was one of the first things I opened up with. Me and Banks did our review for episode 1 of season 2. And we just talked about how it was very Pennywise the Clown, the way Calypso starts that first sequence with the young lady out front is very reminiscent.
We also watched Pleasantville. We watched a ton of stuff.
Oh wow!
And we're doing the same thing this season, but I can't tell you what those movies.
Oh no! Cool. Hey, look, when we do our review, we're gonna be like, hey, I guess they're pulling from this now. Because you think about it, because it's like the frenemies and stuff. Like I can only imagine so many movies and TV shows where it's just like the neighbors hated each other. Like I'm thinking about Married with Children right now, and I'm thinking about Al Bundy and Marcy Darcy. So we're definitely looking forward to season 3, and we can't wait until it comes out. Oh yeah, D, I'm sorry. Yeah, you were asking your question.
You're good.
We started talking about Stargirl again.
Snowball, man. It's okay. And my final question for you, Steve. Growing up, was there a movie, TV show, even a novel that really spooked you, scared you, and stuck with you? Was there any one thing?
Wow.
It could just be something eerie. It doesn't even have to be a horror movie per se.
Well, I have to say that I've always been and was and am completely obsessed with the Twilight Zone. And so
that was my mom's favorite.
Watching all of those episodes, just like the black and white of it all.
My man Rod Sterling. Yeah, he used to open it up.
Talkie Tina and Nightmare at 30,000 Feet and all of that. Just like, those classic episodes.
I love that. Now, before I gotta piggyback this one, did you have a favorite Twilight Zone episode that could come to mind? I remember there was one. The man.
You know what? I do have one. Yeah.
Go ahead. Which one?
It's that I don't know what the
title of it.
I don't know what the title of it is.
Yeah, you'd have to be good to know that.
But it's the one where the guy keeps having the dream. He's getting on a plane. And the woman comes out and says, "There's room for one more, honey." And he gets really freaked out and he runs away, right? And so then he finally, do you guys know this episode? Then he finally goes to the very end. He keeps having this dream. He keeps freaking out. He doesn't know anything. Very end, he's getting on a plane. He's leaving New York to go somewhere. Walks up that runway thing, and the woman comes out. It's the woman from his dream, and she's like, "There's room for one more, honey." And he freaks out and he runs the other way. The plane takes off and explodes in midair.
Mm,
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
that's like some Final Destination type stuff.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's probably where they got
That's
the
one of my
Maybe they
favorite
inspired
episodes.
it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Did you like the reboot with Jordan Peele?
You know, I only saw a couple of episodes of it, and the jury's still out. I need to watch more.
I think you got to be careful with that kind of stuff because
I
Twilight Zone
really
is just a classic.
I was
Enjoyed
gonna say,
the
I
first
really
season.
enjoyed it. I like anthology shows to begin with,
Yeah.
where every episode's a different story.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell a story in a very limited time from front
Hard
to
to
back.
do that.
So,
That's
but
for
that's going back to Stephen King, like you talked about. You know, when you talk about Salem's Lot,
Yeah.
Jerusalem's Lot is a short story that's connected to Salem's Lot, and Jerusalem's Lot is just as good as Salem's Lot, in my opinion. But it's just
Interesting.
a shorter version.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. Now, I will say on the Twilight Zone note, there was I have no idea what the story title was at this point, but there was a story about a guy he wanted nothing but like peace and quiet, and he wanted to read.
Yes, that one.
And then at the
Burgess
very
Meredith
end,
did that one.
and at the very end he breaks his glasses.
Glasses. He has all
There's
these
nobody to
people
repair.
around him.
All the time in the world, but you can't see. So
Yeah.
yep.
Now-
But that's it, guys.
Now, I have two final questions for you because this episode is coming out during the Great Turkey War week. And I want to ask you first, is because it's coming up and I need to know, what's your favorite dish on Thanksgiving?
Oh, no question. Macaroni and cheese.
Oh,
Hey,
another
see,
one for the
I
mac
love-
and cheese.
Another
man.
one for the macaroni
Yeah.
and cheese. You know,
Absolutely.
now baked or cooked in the pan?
Baked.
Okay.
I don't know it in the pan.
I don't know.
You'll
what
be surprised.
If
I
we
don't know
talk
either.
about TikTok videos and
Well,
weird
somebody
stuff,
did put raisins in the macaroni.
and we don't
and
do
cheese.
stuff.
Oh, no.
No, we don't.
I draw the line there.
Hey,
Yeah.
look, I drew the line when they put raisins in the potato salad. I was just like,
Jeez.
no.
No raisins. I'll do raisins in coleslaw, maybe.
Exactly. Or
Not
cranberries.
macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
I said it before. Raisins only belong in trail mix, and that is it. That's where we keep it.
Now, so yeah, that was the first one. And then the second one is, what are some family traditions that you do on Thanksgiving that you're going to be doing this year?
Well, I have to say it goes back to the mac and cheese. So my grandmother used to make amazing mac and cheese. And now, no matter where I am, whether I'm back with the family, whether I'm here in LA, whether I'm visiting friends, like I'm always making and bringing the mac and cheese. And I pull out my grandmother's recipe and I do it from scratch.
Nice.
You know, and
That
I think
is
of
awesome.
her, and it's amazing.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I know one of my traditions is after we all eat, we always go to the movies. And this year, I'm going up to my uncle's and I'm going to take my cousins to go see Ghostbusters. So that's what we're
Nice.
doing. Yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like fun.
So yeah, so Steve, thank you so much for joining us. You were a pleasure. It was awesome
Thank
having
It was
you up
super
here.
fun. Really glad to be here with you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah.
And before we let you go, let everybody in social media land know where they can find you at.
Excellent. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Harper Creates. Also at Your Creative Life. Actually, it's Your Creat V Life because I couldn't fit the extra E in. And that's the Twitter feed for my writing, coaching, and inspirational things about writers, as well as just uplifting stuff. So those are two places to find me, and then from there you can find me in other places as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us. Trav, let them know where they can find you at in social media land.
That's right. I'm on the Instagram at ZK Audio. I'm on the Twitter at TRAVIOSZK, where I'm also on Letterboxd, ranking and rating my daily movie watches. D, where they gonna find my man at?
As always, you can find me at rebellious_D23 Instagram.com. And Banks, if they need a hero.
Hey, you can find me your hero, Benjamin Banks, at KingBenji_Banks on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on Facebook at Benjamin Banks. I should be the first person to pop up. If not, then I need to contact Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you, everybody, again for watching this interview. Make sure that you check out some more interviews that we have here on the channel, along with reaction videos and reviews. Make sure that you check out our podcast where we have brand new episodes every Tuesday. And then the video of that episode, including this one, will be up here on YouTube that Friday. Like I always say, keep that pinky up, stay positive, and be ready for the Great Turkey War. We'll see you next time on Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Peace.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching another episode of Leveling Up with Benjamin Banks. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe to the channel. podcast. We got that too. Make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit that bell for further episodes and notifications. Thanks a lot to our patrons. And if you don't mind, join the Patreon. We'll be having new specials coming up soon.